I call the Prince William County School Board public meeting to order. We will start with the, Pledge of Allegiance from the Girl Scout Troop 2815 from Ashland, Montclair, and Rosa Parks Elementary School. If you can step up here to the microphone, and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Then afterwards, tell us your name, your school, and your grade, just name, and school. Thank you. And I had my sheets a little out of order, but that's okay. Mr. Wilk of the Potomac District would like to begin the school board meeting October 20. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm really ahead of myself. Names, school, and grade.
My name's Layla Akram. I'm in 4th grade, and I go to Rosa Parks Elementary School.
My name is Bailey Peeler, and I go to Rosa Parks Elementary School as well.
I'm Helen Archer, and I go to Montclair Elementary School.
I'm Genesis Jackson, and I go to Montclair Elementary School.
I'm Sienna Stocks, and I go to Montclair Elementary School, and I'm in 4th grade.
My name is Kennedy Jackson. I'm in 4th grade, and I go to Montclair Elementary.
I'm Samantha Brooks from Miss Primrose's class. I'm in 4th grade, and I go to Montclair Elementary School.
My name is Kelly McCoppin, and I go to Montclair Elementary School.
My name is Zoe Mendes, and I go to Rosa Parks Elementary School.
Thank you. And I did get a little ahead of myself. Mr. Wilk of the Potomac District would like to begin today's meeting with a moment of silence. Thank you. We are on item 12.01, approval of the public meeting agenda. A motion is in order.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Williams.
I move that the Prince William County School Board approve the public meeting agenda as recommended.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Ralston. Thank you. Discussion? Those in favor of the motion, please signify yes by raising your right hand. Thank you.
The vote is 8 yes, unanimous. Motion passed.
Adoption of the consent agenda, item 13.01. A motion is in order.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Williams.
I recommend that the Prince William County School Board approve the public meeting consent agenda as recommended.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman, I'll second.
Mr. Brand. Haven't clicked on that one. Consent agenda. Adoption of the consent agenda. Anyone would like to speak to that? Ms. Satterwhite.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are 3 items on here for proposed rezonings. They're all in the Brentsville district, but because of the impact on the high school level, I wanted to speak to it. I was very concerned when I looked at this because when you combine it, we're talking at about 28,000 residential units of different types, and looking at approximately I believe it's just over 300 high school students, not counting elementary and middle school. And I would just urge the Board of County Supervisors to please use great thought before they enter into agreeing to any of these rezonings or building requests. If you look at the numbers for Stonewall Jackson High School in 2021, right before our 13th high school opens, we're looking at a deficit of 684 seats at Stonewall Jackson High School. And that's on top of the deficit we'll have at Battlefield High School and the deficit we'll have at Patriot High School. And then adding more students on top of that with these developments that are being proposed, it greatly concerns me. And I've already received one email from, I think we all received an email from a resident who was concerned about these numbers. And one of the things I noticed about the letter, I don't know if, I guess we would have to take action as a board, but I noticed that when it mentions schools impacted or other schools potentially affected, it mentions Stonewall Jackson because that's the district these schools would be in, or these developments would be in. Other schools potentially affected, it only mentions elementary schools and the Nokesville school. It doesn't mention the high schools. I would suggest that we include the high schools to this letter, or to these letters. Okay, thank you, Mr. Klein. I see an indication. Because potentially it does impact the other high schools, and because of the overcrowding situation. So I'd appreciate it if staff would look into that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Satterwhite. Mr. Deutsch, and then Ms. Jessie.
Okay. I, too, am very concerned about this, and I wanted to just read the letter because I think for the public, I'm just reading one of the letters. You wonder what happens and why we are overcrowded, and why have you not done anything? And I've been on this board now long enough to realize that it's not that Prince William County School Board does nothing when we realize their rezoning has taken place. A letter is sent to the Board of Supervisors, and the staff comment on one of the letters. It's very similar on the others. I just want to read it for the public record. The school division is not in support of any rezoning that increases student capacity at schools already at or in excess of 100% capacity, or a rezoning that causes student capacity at any school to exceed 100% capacity unless proffers sufficient to mitigate the impact of the school division are received. The applicant's proffer statement dated June 27th indicate a monetary contribution of $5,150 per multi-family unit. This is not in accordance with the June 30th, 2014 standard of service for multi-family units of $10,300 per unit. The school division is requesting $10,300 per unit, family unit. An elementary school at Vid Hill Road is scheduled to open on September 24th. A six classroom addition at the elementary school in Haymarket area is scheduled to open in September of 2025. A middle school west is scheduled to open in September 2024. A 13th high school is scheduled to open in September 21 in the western end of the county. My rationale for just reading one of the letters, because the other letters are very similar, is that since I've been on the school board, and I'm told this happened in the past, when the rezoning requests are made, and when Mr. Klein's office determined that we do not have the capacity, we write a letter similar to this to the Board of Supervisors asking them not to rezone. And I've been in many meetings where the school division has been blamed for the overcrowding and that we didn't ask for what we should have asked for. What we asked for the Board of Supervisors to stop continuing to build homes when there is no capacity or space for the residents that are coming into that particular area. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jessie. Mr. Deutsch?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just echoing what's already been said, I didn't realize this was going to be such a popular topic of conversation. I guess as I read through the letters, I would be happier if we made it even more explicit. The school division, does not support this rezoning, period, or does not support until we solve X. I think we do an effective job writing out our rationale, but we do it in a legalese way that maybe some people in the general public don't understand what we're saying. And so being very precise and clear doesn't hurt us in a situation like this. But no, we can't keep building when we don't have the infrastructure for it. So hopefully this is listened to.
Thank you, Mr. Deutsch. Ms. Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I, too, would like to echo the sentiments of my fellow board members. I am not in a pleased with this rezoning if it's going to put more bodies in places we don't have. So I don't want to beat on that subject continuously. I also would like to bring attention to 2 other items, which is School Psychology Awareness Week. I think with the current climate right now that we could always stand to give some positive words to our school psychologists for the work that they do, and let them know that they are appreciated and we value the work that they do. And also Educational Support Professionals Day. I think that we don't spend enough time talking about all of the wonderful aides and people who support our professionals, and they deserve all the recognition that we could possibly give them. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Mr. Brand?
I'm going to echo the sentiments of a lot of people already tonight. Of course, representing the Brentsville District, I do have some concerns about the proposed rezonings. I know this was a topic of discussion at the advisory council meeting at Chris Young Elementary School last night, because I've already received some emails on that topic from some concerned parents. Living in the area, of course, I know what traffic is like. I'm an early morning commuter. I'm on the road usually by 5:30, 5:40, and it's still not early enough. So when I look at things like the possibility of 600 more homes on the corner of Devlin Road and Linton Hall Road, it makes me concerned. Because right now, I don't think there's any major plans to turn Devlin Road into a 4-lane highway. I think it's going to stay 2 lanes. I think Linton Hall is going to stay the way it is. So I worry about it from that perspective, but also definitely the perspective, and Allison touched on it as well, the number of units. There's a possibility of maybe 1,200 new students. The schools that are going to be affected are vast, definitely Young Elementary, Ellis, Gainesville Middle, Marsh Steller, Stonewall Jackson. I know that little section that I'm definitely, the Devlin Road area that I'm referring to, I know that was already part of the comprehensive plan back in 2008 as going to be residential housing. But I'm hoping if it does happen that number 650 will definitely come down just for the effect that potentially it could have on our schools. So these 3 items I'm going to be paying close attention to, and I know I will be hearing from many residents in the Brentsville District that have similar concerns as well. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Brand. Anyone else? I'll quickly reiterate, obviously, what's been said, and I guess add my own quick thought on it, which is I certainly have my own opinions on whether or not we should continue to build based on the infrastructure of our school systems and roads and everything that everybody's already touched on. But I guess stealing from Miss Jessie and dealing with your reality is that if they're going to come, then we need the resources to go along with it, and not only the new houses and new developments that'll be coming in with the students that were required by the Virginia Constitution to provide a free education to. We also need them for the ones that are already here to kind of catch up. So this would just put us a little further behind. So with that, I'll call for the vote on the consent agenda. Those in favor of the motion, please signify yes by raising your right hand. Thank you.
The vote is 8 yes, unanimous. Motion passed.
Okay, moving right along to citizens' comment time. We have 4 speakers signed up ahead of time, 3 speakers at the door. We should be able to knock everybody out here and get it done without having to push to the second part of the day. So with the reminder that you have 3 minutes to speak, I will run the timer here from my computer, and it'll be on the monitors here above us. It'll turn yellow at 30 seconds, I believe, and that'll warn you to kind of wrap it up, and turn red at 0 seconds, reminding you that it's time to step aside. Proper decorum at all times is required. If you do not follow proper decorum, then you will ask us to be step aside as well. I'm going to go ahead and call up all of our speakers. You can either sit in the front row or stay where you are, because it's not that big of a room today, either way. So we have our 7 speakers signed up ahead of time. Brian Pace is our first speaker. Second speaker, Diana Allen. Third is Bill Petrak. Fourth is Bill Card. And then to the signups at the door, Barbara Lawnmore, Carrie O'Brien, and Connor O'Brien. Those are our 7 speakers. So going first is Mr. Brian Pace. Brian? Going once, going twice. Brian? Thank you. Our next speaker is Diana Allen. Diana?
I'm Diana Allen, and Debbie Urban has my information on file. I'm from the Neabsco District. First of all, I want to say that I agree with the committee being created. That way we don't fall into a situation where we're wasting money again, which has already been done within the 10 and a half months you guys have been here. I also would like to say that last time I was here, there was so much hate in this room, and 4 of you took part of it, and I never forgot that, pre-loaded slides and all. And since you guys got away with that, things have just gotten worse from a parent's point of view. You know, from Mr. Trenum to Mr. Bishop, all of these things have ridiculed this county and its residents, and that's not what we want to see. We want to see things done for our children. My community was promised a hero. You didn't deliver. My district has had violence over the summer. We almost had someone who would have been murdered on the property of Hampton Middle School, a school that you spent $500,000 on to rename, but you didn't never care about the kids or the community. But, Mr. Sawyers, you went to Fairfax, and I saw that video, where you wouldn't give us not even a half an hour. You went over there and spoke ill of the county that you serve, making things worse and bringing me here today. And for that reason, because you're the kind of man, a bully, that I warn my kids about, that I protect them against, and I don't think you're here for these children. I really don't. I don't know why you're here, but it's not for the children of Prince William County. And for those reasons, I ask that you step down, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Bill Petrak. Bill?
Good evening. I'm Bill Petrak. I live in Woodbridge. I'm here to talk tonight about the politicalization of the school board. Most of my comments, but not all, will be directed to you, Mr. Sawyers. I'm not a hateful man. I don't want you to take that, my comments as such. My son goes to a parochial school, so prior to about 90 days ago, I didn't know who most of you were on this panel. It's not because I didn't care. I'm a taxpayer. I have friends that have kids that go to the public schools, and I care about our community. When the issue of the non-discrimination policy came up, like many in the county, I was very appalled. We came out here in droves and spoke against it on 2 occasions. There were 600 to 800 people sitting outside and in this room, and I was confident, Mr. Sawyers, that you got the message. I was wrong. Over 125 people came to this podium that night, and less than 10% of them were for that policy change. And Mr. Sawyers, after that, all those people talked, you defiantly pressed for a vote. And then when all the votes were taken, it turns out that you were the only one that was for putting that policy change into place that night. But you didn't stop there. A week later, you went to Fairfax and spoke as the main speaker at an event, and you asked people that didn't elect you to this office, that lived in another place outside this county, to call these other board members and put pressure on them to revisit that vote. That speech you gave was wrong on so many levels. You basically retaliated against every one of the people that are sitting by next to your side there. And you asked people to come and create problems for our county. And during the speech, you called yourself a politician. This is a non-political position that you folks are in. Politicians politicize. I've learned a lot of things in the last 90 days about some of the actions that you've taken, and they're not very charitable, and they're very political. And according to the news reports, it sounds like you've tainted Mr. Wilkes. You both are being sued for things that you may or may have not done, but you're being sued. So I asked the other board members that are here tonight, which one of you are going to allow this man to take you down? Politics have already divided our nation. You'll see that in less than 2 hours. We don't need more division within our communities here. We deserve better. The children deserve better. I respectfully ask you to consider to resign your position as chairman at large. And Mr. Wilkes, you ought to be thinking about it also.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Bill Card. Mr. Card?
Thank you for the opportunity. I rise again to in support of this study that I've provided to all of you. And I would certainly think that it'd be central to any consideration in this LGBTQ panel, which actually, after talking to Ms. Satterwhite, I would support having the superintendent take a look at. And this goes, my comments tonight go right to the core of your comments of 3 months ago, Ms. Williams, in that in areas where, in the past, where we can predict that certain behaviors will, end up damaging a child or, affect adulthood, tobacco use, driving, drugs, safe sex, and things of that nature, the school has always been on the right side, in my opinion. And the study that I've encouraged you to read was dedicated first to the LGBT community, which bears a disproportionate rate of mental health problems compared with the population as a whole. We must find ways to relieve their suffering. And this goes to that, if we're concerned about this community, but the chairman's objective is not in the best interest of the population he seeks to help or appears to seek to help. And that this is indeed for political gain and not in any interest. And again, as we look through the executive summary of this report, the understanding of sexual orientation as an innate, biologically fixed property of human beings, the idea that people are born that way, is not supported by scientific evidence. While there is evidence that biological factors such as genes and hormones are associated with sexual behaviors and attractions, there is no compelling causal biological explanation for human sexual orientation. While minor differences in the brain structures and brain activities between homosexual and heterosexual individuals have been identified by researchers, such neurological findings do not demonstrate whether these differences are innate or a result of environmental and physical factors. Longitudinal studies of adolescents suggest that sexual orientation may be quite fluid over the life course of some people, with one such study estimating as many as 80% of male adolescents who report same-sex attractions no longer do so as adults, although the extent to which this figure reflects actual changes in same-sex attractions and not just artifacts of survey processes have been contested by some researchers.
Thank you.
Well, continue in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Barbara Lawnmore. Barbara?
Howdy do. Hi, I'm Barbara Larimore. I'm a mom from Lake Ridge Elementary School. I have 3 young kids, 2 at Lake Ridge, 1 on its way. And I'd like to see some change before my youngest gets there. Thank you for all that you do. I'm generally very pleased at Lake Ridge Elementary School. We have a wonderful group of parents and families, and so thank you for your work for us. My personal experience is with my 2-year-old second grader. When he started kindergarten, he would chew his shirts and sleeves because he had so much built up energy. He was not used to the sedentary culture of the schools now. So I would yell at him. I'd be so upset and say, "Why are you doing this? Clothes cost money. Please stop." I just had a baby. I was overwhelmed. Well, now I'm kind of over the baby phase, and I'm kind of realizing that this isn't him. This isn't his problem. This is our problem, and I'd really like to solve it. Obesity rates in the 90s were 11%, 2000s 18.7%, and in 2015 they were 29.2%. So extrapolate, by the time my 5-year-old over there, it might be up to 50%. But the writing is on the wall. The CDC states that physical activity can have an impact on cognitive skills, attitudes, and academic behavior, all of which are important components of improved academic performance. These include enhanced concentration and attention, as well as improved classroom behavior. I'd really like my son to be thriving, not just surviving. And it feels like he's just surviving right now, which breaks my heart. So I'd really like that to happen. I talked to the top 10 schools rated in the state of Virginia to try to get an idea of what they're doing and is it better than Prince William County. And across the board on all top 10 rated schools on schooldigger.com, every single one has more physical activity, either that be it recess, PE, or action-based learning. They're all on the forefront of trying to get kids where they live, which is moving, which is their basic fundamental needs. So I'd really like to see Prince William County, it hasn't been updated since 2008, the physical education policy, and I know that's coming up. If that were possible to hire more physical education teachers, increase that 150-minute base minimum, which we're doing for our kindergartners. Over there is my daughter, Eleanor. She is, if she doesn't have PE that day, which some weeks she only has PE once a week, for a 5-year-old, she only gets 15 minutes a day, and that's 6 hours. So if that just puts it in perspective, a 5-year-old has 15 minutes of recess for a 6-hour day. That's not right. That's not where we are in Fairfax County. In all the counties, they have done more for the little ones and kind of gotten them where they live, where they're able to learn and grow and be happy. So thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Carrie O'Brien. Carrie?
Good evening. My name is Carrie O'Brien. I have 5 children, 3 of which attend Prince William County Public Schools. And while I was preparing to come and talk to you this evening, I was reading an article on nrp.org that stated, if you saw a child smoking a cigarette, we would act swiftly to manage it, and yet we have kids that sit in school all day and come home and sit in front of their video games, and we don't have much problem with that. Well, I do have a problem with it, and having 5 kids, I know firsthand, like, what an impact having physical activity is on them, and not having it, you can see the results. I'm sure all of you have had similar things. So I'm here to request that the board makes a change to incorporate more physical activity into the curriculum into our schools. And by making it more routine in their day, it then can become a habit, and they'll likely continue that into their adolescent and adult years while they build their self-esteem and self-confidence. And also, while I was preparing for this, my son Connors, who's here today, said that he wanted to come and talk with you as well to give the reasons why he wants to have more recess and more PE in school too. So I'll let him do all the talking. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And without further introduction, Connor O'Brien.
Hello, my name is Connor O'Brien. I think kids should have more recess because if the teachers do it in the morning and they give them like a few 20 minutes, then they won't be all wild in class, so they won't be all wiggly and jumpy. And if they go to PE like every day, then that will teach them how to get active and learn what to do instead of just sitting on their bed all day doing Xbox or playing on the PlayStation. And if their parents don't have it, like if their parents work overnight, then and they have like a month off of work, then they would only have like 1 month to do like a sport. So they should ask their parents to do that instead of just sitting on their couch all day.
Thank you. And that wraps up citizens' comment time. Moving on to item 15.01. Oh, I'm sorry. With no objection from the board. One more speaker? Yes, ma'am. Let me hit some buttons here.
My name is Victoria Blevins, and I come to you with a serious concern regarding C.D. Hilton High School. I sent and forwarded an email to all of you, but I did not get a response, so I figured I would address all of you here today. Tuesday, October 4th, my son received, along with other students, received a death threat at the school. I, as a parent, was not notified until 3 days later. When I asked and addressed them what happened, they told me that there were other pressing matters going on at that time, and that is absolutely and completely unacceptable. It's infuriating that there are other things going on that you cannot pick up the phone and tell a parent that their child received a death threat. Considering the fact that it is still being investigated, I had the security officer and the assistant principal call me and ask me if I knew who could have possibly have done it. Now, if the threat was deemed as something that wasn't serious, then why are you calling me and asking me if I know who did it? If this is something that they should be investigating, and the fact that it took 3 days for them to pick up the phone and call me is absolutely and completely negligent. And then on the phone, having me to believe that the threat was found that day and not 3 days before. I found out it was found 3 days before after questioning my student. And then when speaking with Mr. Mulgrew, they made him believe that the threat was found on that Friday also when it was 3 days before. And when I asked what the process was, what the ramifications were, I got no answers. If a student comes to a school and they lie or they're deceiving people, they're punished. So what's the administration do if they're deceiving the parents? This is a very serious matter. A lot of things are going on in this world. A lot can happen in 2.5 seconds, let alone 3 days. I would like this issue addressed, and I would like it addressed of the administration at the school, what they're going to do about it, what their ramifications are going to be, and how it's going to proceed in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And if you, ma'am, if you could mind giving the B, if you could mind gathering her information for the record as well before she thinks just like everybody else. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to superintendent's time. Dr. Waltz.
Thank you, Chairman Sawyers, members of the board. The numbers are in, and this year's official student enrollment in PWCS is 88,920 students. We added 1,667 students since last year. At the last school board meeting, I announced that our on-time graduation rate is 91.8%, which again was above the statewide results. Additional data showed that the on-time graduation rate for our English learners topped the state by almost 10 percentage points and exceeded all other Northern Virginia school divisions. This reflects a great job by all of our administrators and teachers, and especially the entire staff in the Office of English Learner Programs and Services, led by Director Janine Sodke. Congratulations to 25 students who have passed auditions with flying colors and have been selected for the Virginia Music Educators Association Honor Choir. An additional 4 students were named as alternates. The students attend Battlefield, Brentsville, Forest Park, Hilton, Patriot, Potomac, Stonewall Jackson, and Woodbridge High Schools. Congratulations also to the choir directors in these schools for encouraging the remarkable talents of our students. Logan Love, a senior at Patriot High School, continues to represent his school and the school division in an outstanding manner as a member of the College Board Advisory Panel on Student Opportunity. He attended a conference in California this summer and a College Board forum this month in Chicago to give his perspective as a student. He also serves on the Youth Advisory Council on Access to Higher Education for the College Board and DoSomething.org. Congratulations, Logan Love. The Office of Facility Services is seeking volunteers to serve on the Boundary Planning Committee for the new Eastern Elementary School scheduled to open next year. The deadline to sign up is October 28th. Please see the announcement on the school division website for full details. A few upcoming events to note. On Thursday, October 20th, the new 1.1-mile Discovery Trail that runs from Coles Elementary School to Benton Middle School and on to Colgan High School will be dedicated. The ceremony will be held at Colgan High School's outdoor amphitheater at 3:00 p.m. The middle and high school all-county chorus performances will be on October 28th and 29th at Freedom High School. The middle school men's choir will perform at 7 p.m. on Friday, the 28th of October. Saturday's performance will begin with the high school treble choir at 2 p.m., followed by the senior mixed choir. The middle school women's choir will perform at 4:30 p.m. All performances are free and open to the public. And finally, high school specialty program information nights will be held on October 24th at Garfield High School and October 25th at Stonewall Jackson High School. Both events will be held from 7 to 9 p.m. So if you are interested, especially if you're a parent of an 8th grader, great opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Waltz. Moving on to item 16.01, revisions to policy 131, regular, special, and closed meetings. That's the second reading. Mr. Deutsch, this is your item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We brought this up for discussion at the last meeting, bringing it back again. The goal is simply to allow a little more board cohesion and have the board work together on the way that it goes about putting things on the agenda, just so we're dealing with issues that we as a board believe are a priority. The way this is composed was meant to be sort of a middle ground, shall we say. A lot of other places require a majority in order to put things on the agenda. That would be a big change from what we have. This was
Mr. Deutsch, we will have to have a motion first, then we can go into discussion, just so we know.
all right. I'll move that the Prince William County School Board adopt the revisions to Policy 131 as proposed.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Ralston.
I'll second.
Okay. All right, now discussion. Mr. Deutsch.
Sure. I'll just finish speaking. I think most other places I've looked at require some sort of majority for things to be on the agenda, including our own Board of Supervisors. This is just a proposal as a middle ground between those, which a majority would have been a much larger change. So just looking at something that's maybe a little simpler, definitely open to a lot of other ideas.
Thank you, Mr. Deutsch. Ms. Williams.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to offer an amendment to the current one on the floor, and that is to revise the words of consent of at least 2 other board members to the chair and the vice chair. My reasoning being that 2 other board members, it's really not a quorum, and I'm thinking long term after we're long gone off the board and other people have come, in terms of being equitable and fair for any new and oncoming board or whatever the case may be, that I think it's the responsibility really lies with the chair and the vice chair, and I think it should not be an either-or situation.
Let's see if we get a second first. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Sorry to cut you off. Same thing with Mr. Deutsch. Let's see if we get a second first, then we can open discussion. Do we have a second? Real quick to make sure I have it right, Ms. Williams.
Yes.
Replace consent of at least 2 other board members to consent of the chairman and vice chairman.
Correct.
Okay. So do we have a second for that motion? Ms. Jessie?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Jessie. Now discussion. Ms. Williams.
Sorry, yes. So anyway, short story, make short, is basically I'm thinking long-term for equity for other oncoming school boards. I feel that it's in the best interest of the board itself to have the chair and the vice chair be named instead of just 2 other random board members, being that it's up to whoever the voters choose to be on the board, and it may be anyone, and at least in those 2 positions, I think they're better suited for agenda planning than just 2 random board members.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Ms. Jessie.
I'm a new vice chair for the board, and I attended the Virginia School Board Association training, and in that training it said that the number 1 job of the chair is the agenda. And so for that reason, I think that the chair and the vice chair need to be included. I'm also concerned about at least 2 other board members when we consult with other board members, we also have to be aware of the requirement that 3 board members not consult. And even if you had 1 board member, in order to get 2 board members to agree to your item on the agenda, it could appear to constitute a meeting. The other situation I see with this is that if, for example, Ms. Ralston wanted to put something on the board agenda, and she called and asked for me to approve or support her putting it on the agenda, and then when I approve her putting it on the agenda, but then later I decide I'm not voting for what she's placed on the agenda, I could see some situations. So I'm all for us having input, and but at the same time, I think it's really important that we follow the guidelines of the Virginia School Board Association, and that the vice chair and the chair really are involved in the actual scheduling and final approval of the board, the actual board agenda. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Jessie. Ms. Ralston.
Thank you. May I ask our attorney for the evening to give us a little information as you know it?
With respect to whether that would...
Yeah, I mean, does the 4 members constitute a meeting? If I turn your mic on. Mm-hmm.
Well, any meeting or contemporaneous discussion of 3 or more members of the board would constitute a meeting. Individual contacts between members, whether it be, over time, that add up to 4 wouldn't necessarily be a meeting if it's done on an individual basis. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank
okay.
you.
Good, Ms. Ralston. I'll wait till we got a separate discussion here going. Yeah, I think the concern is definitely it takes 3 meetings. I agree with what Ms. Jessie was saying. I think the key word that she said was even perception. If 3 people are potentially getting together, even if it's done properly, I guess, 1 person at a time, it does give a perception. Just so everyone knows, and a little clarity here, Ms. Jessie and I meet every time we put together. We're on a conference call together every time to help put the agenda together and organize it. So that is already a standard procedure that we do for every meeting. The one thing that I like about this, I guess, is it kind of strikes a balance, because Prince William County is, I think, unique or certainly rare in the case in which we elect our chairman by popular vote, where the board itself doesn't elect the chairman, like is in the case in all other or most other jurisdictions. But the vice chairman, however, is elected by the board. So I actually think it strikes a nice balance of the people's choice to help with the agenda, which is the chairman's seat, but also the board's choice in order to help prepare the agenda, which is the vice chairman's seat. So I do think it strikes a nice balance between those 2. Any further discussion? Mr. Deutsch?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I'm very concerned by this, because when we say the chairman and vice chairman are required in order to put something on the agenda, what we're doing is shifting this from where 1 board member can put something on to now that board member needs the approval of both the chairman and vice chairman. And essentially what we're doing is giving the chairman or the vice chairman a pocket veto on anything being put on the agenda. Because if either one of them says they don't want it on the agenda, they don't have to sign off, it doesn't go on the agenda. If we would require some sort of majority of 3 or 5, it would require board members to work together, but wouldn't centralize power in 1 person. And so moving it to requiring both people, both the chairman and vice chairman, to sign off is going to create some interesting problems down the road.
Thank you, Mr. Deutsch. Anyone else? Ms. Satterwhite.
Mr. Chairman, yes, thank you. I also have some concerns too, because it's changing the intent of what was proposed here for the policy change. And it already says in the bottom of this section, section 5 of the policy, that the chairman and vice chairman of the school board are also involved. At the bottom of it, it says that a prior principal that has, as it says right now, items may be placed on the agenda by the superintendent or by a school board member with the consent of at least 2 other board members at a prior Prince William County School Board meeting, or by notifying the superintendent's office, chairman or vice chairman of the school board at least 9 days in advance of a regular meeting date. Such items shall be described in specific written terms. So the chairman and vice chairman are already mentioned as being involved in the process. And as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, already the vice chairman and chairman are involved in agenda planning. And I think this just opens it up to other board members to be able to put it. I think it limits us from having too much on the agenda, which is what we're trying to do. We're trying to control our meetings, but at the same time, letting board members work together. Now, I had some problems with it being a total of 3 board members. Personally, I'd rather it be 2 board members, because I don't want the appearance of an illegal meeting. And I had some language I was going to suggest to change that if we were going to go with 3. Personally, I'd rather see us change it to 2 board members total, that by a school board member with the consent of 1 other board member. But that's my personal opinion. I'm not crazy about this proposed amendment that's on the table right now.
Thank you. Anyone else for the first time? I think Mr. Wilk, Mr. Brand, you're the only ones that haven't gone yet. Mr. Brand.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm actually quite happy with the way Willie came up with it, with the consent of at least 2 other board members. I'm really not sure what the main concern is. I think it encourages communication and collaboration among board members. I don't know if there's an assumption that if somebody wants to put something on the agenda, they'll always go to the same 2 people. I know personally I probably will not do that. I'll try my best to reach out to as many of you as possible, especially if it kind of depends on the topic. So personally, I like the original revision more so than what's been proposed. Thank you.
If Mr. Wilk doesn't want to go, I'll kind of chime in on a few of the things that were said. I think ultimately, like I said, in basically in discussions with the people who did the board training with us a while back, that when I talked with them about the setting up that training, they were a bit shocked to our meeting when they found out that anyone could add to the agenda. That was something new, and their take was essentially basically, this is what the chairman does. The chairman sets the agenda in most cases. So this is actually a little more forgiving than just that, which is commonplace not only across Virginia but throughout the country. But it doesn't stop, I guess, to your point, Mr. Brand. It doesn't stop if there's such an agenda item that has such a popularity that you've contacted everyone individually and said, look, I've got 4 or 5 other board members that are interested in adding this. That certainly would get my attention. I don't want to speak for the vice chairman, but that certainly would get my attention as well as to items that would go on. But it is my job and her job as well to make sure that the agenda is controlled to a certain degree, that things are slated, presentations are slated, and so that the staff isn't asked to put together presentation after presentation after presentation, which certainly takes up a very large portion of their time. And so that's why, again, based on not only what we've done here in the past, but what is basically commonplace throughout the entire Commonwealth of Virginia, it does allow those types of things. I am concerned still about the idea of even potential of an improper meeting. But even with individual contact between members, when things are sent to Ms. Satterwhite's point about how we're already involved, we're only involved in the way that you have 3 options to communicate how you want something added to the agenda. We don't really have the say in how that's done. You have 3 options to say, put this on the agenda, which is to contact the superintendent, contact the chairman, or contact the vice chairman. But there's not a whole lot of language in there to control the agenda. It is my understanding, and I've had many conversations not only with Dr. Waltz, but actually the previous 2 chairs as well, that they did take some authority just to kind of remove, to control the agenda on their own, something that I haven't done a whole lot of other than working with the board member who was tried to place it on there myself. So again, I think it doesn't stop a little one-on-one collaboration like you suggested. It doesn't prevent that from happening. And when an item is sent, if this passes in theory, then it easily could be that could be sent to the chairman, vice chairman, superintendent, saying that I'm putting this forward along with the consent of these other board members as well. So I don't think it stops that from happening, but it does allow the chairman and the vice chairman to run a better meeting. Anyone else? All right, we'll vote on this amended motion to replace consent of at least 2 other board members to the consent of the chairman and vice chairman. Those in favor of the motion, those in favor of replacing the words consent of at least 2 other board members to consent of the chairman and vice chairman, please signify yes by raising your right hand. I have Wilk, Ralston, Sawyers, Williams, and Jesse. Those no, please signify no by raising your right hand. Brand, Satterwhite, and Deutsch. Sorry, I got to click all the right buttons here. I apologize.
The vote is 5 yes. Wilk, Ralston, Sawyers, Jesse, Williams, 3 no. Deutsch, Satterwhite, and Brand. Motion passed.
Okay, and that brings us back to the main motion with the amended motion attached, which I will add to the main motion language just for perfect clarity's sake. I'm going to copy and paste. If I hit the right buttons here, I apologize. Give me 1 second. So the main motion now reads that the Prince William County School Board revise Policy 131, regular, special, and closed meetings to require the school board members to obtain the consent of at least 2 other board members in order to add the agenda of regular, special, and closed session meetings. And then I copy and pasted the language from the amendment that we just put forth that we replace consent of at least 2 other board members to consent of the vice chairman. Okay, we're back on the main motion for discussion on the main motion. All right, Mr. Deutsch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would strongly urge a no vote on this motion. I think this is honestly one of the worst things this board could do. If this board wants to go ahead and consolidate power to the chairman, give the chairman veto power over what is put on the agenda, then go ahead and vote for this. When it says chairman and vice chairman, the wording on this is going to require the sign off of whoever the chairman is and whoever is the vice chairman to get things on the agenda. If you want to do that, then vote for this as written. This kind of consolidation of power is going to limit each of us as individuals to represent our districts, to represent the community, and is going to set a very dangerous precedent down the road. I'm very concerned by this.
Anybody else? Ms. Satterwhite, I'll remind everyone, Mr. Deutsch, I let you go a little bit, but it is against Robert's Rules of Order to speak against your own motion. You can vote against your own motion, but you can't speak against your own motion according to Robert's Rules of Order.
My motion got gutted.
Ms. Satterwhite and then Ms. Williams.
I agree. The intent of the motion was changed. I will be voting against this motion, too, because the changes are so substantial from what was recommended and from what the original intent was. So I'll be voting against this motion.
Thank you, Ms. Satterwhite. Ms. Williams.
I just would like some clarification, I guess. From reading what we currently have, I don't see, maybe I don't understand how we're consolidating power to the chair. It didn't appear that we were limiting the remaining board members from adding items to the agenda, especially during meetings. So I just want to make sure that I'm not missing anything by this. My intent was to have a streamlined, cohesive process so that we know who we're going to, regardless of who sits in the chair or vice chair position, and to make us function more like a traditional board, not to limit anybody's power to add things to the agenda, because I believe that that was not removed. So, and I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. I guess I'm more asking a question than a...
Correct. I mean, again, it was your amended motion. I mean, the way I read it ultimately is that, yeah, I mean, ultimately the chair and the vice chair have to ultimately put the agenda together as far as a timely board meeting and those types of things. And how it's worked in the past is if people had essentially asked for something to be on the agenda and the timing wasn't right, or we worked with that individual board member to move it to a different meeting or to create a different time. It wasn't necessary to ultimately prevent it from ever making the agenda, but in order to organize a meeting. Like Ms. Ross and I have worked together on different things that have been put on the agenda, and they ultimately got delayed because of some other things as well, but that has happened in the past. So that again is not, it's not necessarily to consolidate power. Again, other boards, just basically all the boards across the state, the chairman sets the agenda, period. But this is something that allows us, the chairman and vice chairman, to agree to keep an organized meeting. Ms. Williams still has the floor.
Yeah, that was the intent of the "and" in there. Right. So just wanted to make sure that it was understood that it was not a consolidation just for one position on the board, but it would require both.
Ms. Jessie.
My concern about getting permission from other board members to put an item, I'm uncomfortable with that because I may be the only person who has that particular idea, and when I start trying to convince somebody else to allow me to put it on the agenda, then I feel like I could twist their arms. And even if you're doing one, you got to talk to several people, and then you find yourself, you really could very easily end up in having a board meeting with an individual, with a person. So that's also one of my concerns. And as I said, I've gone to the training, and I brought my manual from the training from the Virginia School Board Association, and I can only go by what the number one PowerPoint was, which is the role of the chairman and the role of the vice chair. So I'm just following that. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jessie. Ms. Ralston.
Okay, let me see if I have it straight now that I think the rest of you have it straight. But it does not preclude us from giving an item to the superintendent to be placed on the agenda, right? So let me make sure, Ms. Williams, I'm hearing you, that we could give it to either the chair or the vice chair or the superintendent. Now, I grant you some, if this works and I get to see what I put on there within at least 2 or 3 months, I'm gonna feel real happy instead of waiting a whole summer. But it was necessary. So am I understanding this correctly?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Wilkes, you look.
I don't know if that's helpful.
That didn't help, okay.
Is that how it reads, that the superintendent?
You have to use your, I'm sorry, Ms. Ralston, you have the floor. Did you have a point of information that you'd like clarified?
Did I see or did I not see the superintendent? I thought it was in the first.
Correct. The superintendent, giving the information to sending your agenda items to the superintendent is still part of the policy.
It's still part of the process.
Correct.
Okay.
All right.
May I just say?
Ms. Jessie, yes.
I called down to Richmond on this because I wanted to be clear. And the superintendent is automatically one of the people on the, when we meet on Friday morning, a conference call, the superintendent is always involved and is a member. Thank you.
Just to clarify Ms. Ralston's point of information, just to be perfectly clear here, the superintendent by law has the right to add to the agenda. The school board can't take that authority away from him. So I just want to make sure we're clear here that by Virginia statute, the superintendent can add to the agenda. I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page there. Ms. Satterwhite.
Getting to that point of clarification, reading this, items as proposed, items may be placed on the agenda by the superintendent or by a school board member with the consent of the chairman and vice chairman, so by a school board member with the consent of the chairman and vice chairman, either at a prior Prince William County School Board meeting or by notifying the superintendent's office chairman or vice chairman of the school board at least 9 days in advance of the regular meeting date. So it still says if a school board member is going to propose an item for the agenda, it has to have the consent of the chairman and vice chairman. So even if a school board member is going to give it to the superintendent, we're saying the school board member has to have the consent of the chairman and vice chairman. The superintendent, it still says here, has the right to place something on the agenda. So that's the way this reads right now. I think we're better off leaving the language the way it already was on here than we are adding the new language at this point, because we are so changing the intent of this policy.
I'm sorry, Ms. Satterwhite. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
We have taken what originally was written is items may be placed in the agenda by a school board member at a prior Prince William County School Board meeting or by notifying the superintendent's office chairman or vice chairman of the school board at least 9 days in advance of a regular meeting date. Okay, so that was the current language. Now we're saying a school board member has to have consent of the chairman and the vice chairman in order to get an item on the agenda. And I think that's a bad idea, because already the chairman and the vice chairman are working on agenda planning, and I think that I think it's a very bad idea. I think it does consolidate the power of the board and the chairman and vice chairman. I think it gets in the way of other board members trying to do business of the board and business of their districts. I think it's I think it's completely against the intent of what the original policy was and what the original proposal for the change was. We're better off, like I said, we're better off not voting or voting against what's proposed tonight and leaving the policy like it was than we are to vote this in tonight. This is a very, very bad idea.
Thank you, Ms. Satterwhite. Ms. Williams.
Okay. So it actually reads, items may be placed on the agenda by the superintendent or by a school board member with the consent, the new change would be the chairman and the vice chair, at a prior Prince William County School Board meeting, or by notifying the superintendent's office, chairman or vice chairman of the school board at least 9 days in advance of a regular meeting date. There is no way, shape, or form any other words have been changed on this policy except for the few words with the consent of at least two other board members with the consent of the chair and the vice chair. The word or gives you another option, so there's no consolidation solely of the chair and the vice chairman to add items to the agenda. That is why the word or is in there after the comma, and it says by notifying the superintendent's office chair or vice chair of the school board at least 9 days. So what we're doing is changing the first half of how you can place an item on the agenda. The second option provided to board members has not been changed at all in any way, shape, or form. So we're not consolidating all of the power into the chair or the vice chair. Now, I know this was discussed so that it would be a fair and equitable process for board members to add items on the agenda, and I do not in my heart and soul believe that I am changing the spirit of that. All I believe that I am doing by recommending this change was to make it a streamlined process so that we all are aware of what's going on by being able to contact the chair or the vice chair, and that's only for half of an option of one part of how you can add something to the agenda. It does not take away from the second half of what is already currently written. So in no way, shape, or form are we limiting ourselves. It's just a streamlined process. So I hate to beat a dead horse with a stick, but I don't want the public to think that this is streamlining a process when we have the remainder of this policy that's not being read that provides a secondary option for adding items to the agenda. So I would like the public to be very aware that that option is not being changed or being altered in any way, shape, or form. So there is still a completely separate second option for how board members can add items to the agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Yes, I'll call the vote. Those in favor of the motion, please signify yes by raising your right hand. I'm sorry, those in favor, we're on the main motion. Those in favor, let me do the motion one more time. I know we got talking quite a bit here. I apologize. I'm supposed to read it anyway, and I didn't. That the Prince William County School Board revise policy 131, regular, special, and closed meetings to require that the school board members to obtain the consent of at least two other board members in order to add the item of the agenda to the regular, special meetings. And then I copy and pasted from the approved amendment earlier that we replace consent of at least two other board members to consent of the chairman and vice chairman. So we're now on to the main motion. So those voting in favor of the main motion, which includes the amended motion that we approved earlier, those in favor of the main motion, please signify yes by raising your right hand. Okay, I'm sorry. Let me.
Are we voting on this motion?
I'm sorry.
We're voting. We're voting on the main motion, which with the amended motion. So, yes, with the the amendment motion included, right? With the and adding. So it's the main motion with the replacement being made, with that we already voted on earlier, that we just voted on just a few minutes ago. I'm sorry. Thank you. Those in favor of this motion, please signify yes by raising your right hand. Thank you. Wilk, Ralston, Sawyers, Jesse, Williams. Those not in favor, please signify yes by raising your right hand. Thank you. Deutsch, Satterwhite, Brand.
The vote is 5 yes. Wilk, Ralston, Sawyers, Jesse, Williams, 3 no. Deutsch, Satterwhite, and Brand. Motion passed.
Thank you. Mr. Brand, we're moving on to your item here, which is item 16.02, Safe Schools Advisory Council appointment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make the motion that the Prince William County School Board approve the appointment of Ann Nuzzo to represent the Brentsville District on the Safe Schools Advisory Council for a 2-year term.
Thank you, Mr. Brand. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman, I'll second.
Mr. Deutsch, thank you. Discussion. Mr. Brand.
I want to point out I've known Ann for about, I guess, 4 or 5 years now. Ann's a very engaged parent. She has served in some capacity on advisory councils and other committees at 3 different elementary schools, at Ellis, Piney Branch, and now Chris Young. Her neighborhood has clearly been one that's been affected by boundary changes in Prince William County. That's what happens when you live in the Western End, and of course, all over the county. She's also actively engaged now at Gainesville Middle School. And also, Ann and I were both on the Devlin Road, which is now the Chris Young Elementary School Boundary Committee. I think she'll be an excellent addition to the Safe Schools Advisory Council, so I look forward to hearing from her and hearing how those meetings are going, because I will miss that group. It's an excellent council here in Prince William County.
Thank you, Mr. Brand. Any further discussion? Sorry, hit the wrong button there. I'm going to call the vote. Those in favor of the motion, please signify yes by raising your right hand. Ms. Jessie, thank you.
The vote is 8 yes, unanimous. Motion passed.
Thank you. Moving on to item 16.03, designation of the it's worded as designation division council as Mary McGowan as the official school board parliamentarian. Mr. Deutsch, this is your item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since Ms. McGowan isn't here, I'd move the table to the next meeting.
With unanimous consent from the board, this is a board item, so we need unanimous consent. Any objection to tabling this or moving this to the next meeting? Okay. I'm sorry.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Ralston?
Thank you. I just need a second to read something. Okay.
I'm sorry, I just want to be clear. Are you objecting, or would you okay with moving it on? I just didn't want to move on with if I didn't understand what your intent there. Okay. Moving on to item 16.04, the LGBTQ task force. Ms. Jessie, this is your item.
I move that the Prince William County School Board direct the superintendent to assemble an administrative team for the purpose of preparing a framework within which public education, public involvement, and input may take place relative to the proposed revision of Policy 060, non-discrimination and commitment to equity, and further directing the superintendent to report back to the school board with a suggested framework in January of 2017.
Thank you, Ms. Jessie. Do I have a second? Ms. Williams?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to second.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. And discussion, Ms. Jessie.
I think we've had a discussion about this, but there were several members of the audience. We had huge number of citizens to come out, and there were representatives. Some were parents, some were members of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and questioning community. And so I would like to give the superintendent give us an opportunity to obtain input so that regardless of what the law is finalized, the finalized element of the law, that we have some input from our community. That was my main concern about that proposal.
Thank you, Ms. Jessie. Anyone else? Ms. Ralston.
Yes, thank you. And I want to direct it to Ms. Jessie. Ms. Jessie, did you, just wait.
Ms. Jessie, I believe Ms. Ralston may have a point of information for you.
I'm sorry. Yes. In your motion, are you making sure that the superintendent will add students to his committee?
Let me just jump in real quick, Ms. Jessie. I believe the motion is just asking the superintendent to go develop something, and there's nothing ultimately in there yet. We're just asking, the motion as I read it is just to ask him to develop it. Similar, if you don't mind me saying, to I guess what we do with the task force, with Mr. Trenum's infrastructure task force. We sent it to the superintendent first with really no framework at all, just the idea that it be sent to him, and then in this time frame that's introduced in the motion, he will kick it back to us for us to chew it up and spit it back out as we see fit, just like we did with the infrastructure task force. So this is just directing him to develop it and then bring it back to us for our approval.
Well, I'd like to add.
I'm sorry, if your microphone, Ms. Ralston's a little far away. There you go.
I'd like to just add the word students to the motion, if you don't mind.
Well, that would be an amendment. Where? Okay.
May I, Ms. Ralston?
Well,
Ms. Ralston. May I ask?
And again, I'd just like to make sure that students are involved. I understand what you're saying. I understand that the superintendent will be putting together this task force or coming up with a plan and a framework for the task force.
Okay. I do have a motion on the floor. I'm sorry, Dr. Waltz, I'll get to you in 1 second. I do have a motion on the floor. Ms. Ralston, I just need... I'm sorry.
What I can do is pull that and wait for what the superintendent presents to us.
We can do that as well, because again,
much.
okay. So there is no motion on the floor, just to be clear, amended motion? Okay. Just wanted to be clear. Thank you, Ms. Ralston. Anyone, let me close this. I love when I have to click buttons and all sorts of windows pop up. I'm sorry. Okay, it disappeared. All right. Any other discussion on this motion, which was made by Ms. Jessie and seconded by Ms. Williams? The motion on the floor is that the Prince William County School Board direct the superintendent to report back to the school board in January 2017 with a suggested framework for a task force. This task force is being formed for the purpose of soliciting further community input relative to the issues and concerns arising out of the proposed revision to Policy 060, non-discrimination and commitment to equity. The superintendent and/or the task force will report back to the school board as determined in the framework. I call the vote. Those in favor of the motion, please signify yes by raising your right hand. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, clarification. Are we voting on the motion as put on the floor, or are we voting on the substitute motion?
There was no substitute motion for clarification.
Do we have full chance to discuss this? I didn't hear you asking for further comments. I heard Ms. Ralston put forward her idea. I didn't hear further comments.
I did ask for further comments.
I'm sorry, I missed that because I did have some comments to make. Because I wanted to know where the comments. I gave you a motion that combined the two items from October 5th and October 19th, and you told me before the meeting that you'd put it in there, and you didn't change any of the language from October 19th.
Well, I clicked save. Let me. I actually have it in a Word document here, here as well. So maybe, like I told you, maybe it didn't save.
Okay.
I tried to save and told everyone to hit F5. So maybe I typed it up right here.
Because we had different language on October 5th.
I know, correct.
We had language on October 5th. We had different language tonight. I had written something up that I showed Ms. Jessie before the meeting
Right.
that combined both.
That's correct.
And I also wanted to comment on what Ms. Ralston said. So I apologize for missing the cue there, but I thought we were voting on what Ms. Ralston was suggesting to
No,
add to
she
the
didn't.
motion.
She ended up not making an amended motion, so there was no other amended motion on the floor. I'm trying to see what I had typed up here versus what is there again. I typed this just before the meeting. We do have a motion on the floor ultimately. Would you like?
I would like to make a substitute motion, and I believe you have the paper that I gave you.
Well, let me just make sure that since you have the, do I have the paper? Do you have the
have
paper?
it.
My typing skills may not be. I think I gave it to Miss Jessie.
Oh, here it is. This is it, right?
Yeah, yes, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the problem is that I have called the vote, and so if we at this point, since I've called the vote, we can't open to further discussion, but we can either pass this motion or not pass it, and then ultimately we can put another motion on the floor. But the vote has been called. So again, there was no. This was this. So,
We could not vote for this motion and
correct. This motion is on the floor and the vote has been called. So we do have to call this motion. We can either vote this up or down. Yeah, we can. Understood. But again, I've called the vote on this, so we ultimately, we have to basically have the vote on this motion, and then if we would like to table it or make a new motion, then we certainly can do that, as we've done with items in the past. So with that, with the motion that has been read and announced, that I'll ask for those in favor of this motion, please signify yes by raising your right hand.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a motion to table this until next week, or next meeting, so that we have a chance to look at the two different motions that we've had, what we had proposed on October 5th, what we have proposed tonight, because the language doesn't match from what we were presented last meeting and what we were presented in tonight's meeting.
Hold on. We can't make another motion right now. I've called the vote on this. No further motions can be taken. We have to vote on this. If this fails, Ms. Satterwhite, I'm again happy with copying and pasting the language that you had handed to me earlier.
Mr. Chairman, can I have a motion to suspend the rules? Because you led me to believe before the meeting that you had put in my motion, and I'm sorry I missed the cue. Usually I can catch it very well when you're asking for further discussion.
Sure.
I really did think we were voting on Ms. Ralston's suggestion. I'm concerned because we had different language 2 different times, and we were supposed to have the same language, and we didn't. And so I'd like for us to look at this again.
Here's what I'm suggesting, because ultimately I sat here and manually typed in off the sheet of paper that you gave me. I was sitting here typing before the meeting, and I clicked save, so maybe it didn't save, and for that I apologize. But if you'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules, which can interrupt any speaker on the floor, if you'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules to put in this language that you have, and we can add that as the new motion, that would be suspending the rules on making the motion and allowing this language to go in. That's what we can do. So
yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to do that.
Again, board docs may have gotten the best of me there, so we'll ultimately make that happen. So those in favor of suspending the rules to adopt the language as Ms. Satterwhite had brought forth earlier, and I'll read that just so everyone knows. Ms. Satterwhite, let's make sure that I have this right this time so we don't have to do it again. It's right here. She handed me. I'm going to read it as you handed it to me. That the Prince William County School Board direct the superintendent to report back to the school board in January 2017 with a suggested framework for a task force. This task force is being formed for the purpose of soliciting further community input relative to issues and concerns arising out of the proposed revision to Policy 060, non-discrimination and commitment to equity. The superintendent and/or the task force will report back to the school board as determined in the framework. That's exactly what the motion is now on the floor. I don't know, maybe you did not hit F5 to refresh during the earlier. So that was word for word what is the current motion. Sorry, I can't read both at the same time. So, okay. So that is the motion on the floor.
I hit F5 3 times before the meeting.
It happens to the best of us.
His is not correct either, so there's some sort of technical issue. It's only up on this screen.
Ms. Urban, this is essentially coming down to a technological issue at this point.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
If she's made a motion to suspend the rules, that requires a second.
Right, but I understand that it requires a second. I'm just making sure that we understand what we're suspending the rules for.
Right, I just need clarification when I do the minutes.
I understand that.
Thank
We haven't received a second yet, but I wanted to make sure what everyone knew. To suspend the rules, we have to be specific as what we're suspending the rules for. And so I just want to make sure that everyone knows what we're suspending the rules for before we do such a thing.
Somebody else. Mr. Chairman, since somebody else obviously had something different on their screen too, and I think it is a good idea that we all get on the same page. So thank you for the time on this.
Sure. So are we okay, Miss? Do you still want to have your motion to suspend the rules, or are you okay with, since the motion that I have on my computer, which is the one that will go into the record, is the same as what you handed me? Are you okay with? Are you comfortable with that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Satterwhite, and I apologize for the confusion. So therefore, I'm going to read it one more time. Let me take a sip. Board docs. All right. That the Prince William County School Board direct the superintendent to report back to the school board in January 2017 with a suggested framework for a task force. This task force is being formed for the purpose of soliciting further community input relative to issues and concerns arising out of the proposed revision to Policy 060, non-discrimination and commitment to equity. The superintendent and/or the task force will report back to the school board as determined in the framework. Those in favor of the motion, please signify yes by raising your right hand. Thank you.
The vote is 7 yes, 1 absent. Deutsch, motion passed.
Thank you. We're moving on to board matters. We'll start with Mr. Wilk.
I'll go quick so we can get home and watch the clown show at 9. Great time visiting Patty Elementary's Makerspace. If anyone saw that, the board doc video is online. And great time visiting that and filming my first board brief. Had the pleasure of visiting Swans Creek last night for their kickoff of the Watchdog program. Over 150 participants, dads and granddads in attendance. Great event. Participated in my first Falcon Bruin run at Ashland Elementary. Great community turnout, and from there I went to the Ashland Community Fall Festival. A lot of great participation, a lot of active, very engaged parents. Finally had the chance to visit Dumfries Elementary last week and saw some great best practices in the classroom. Let's see. Finally, as mentioned already, with the superintendent's time, we do have a new elementary school coming in the area back where the Potomac Shores development is. We are looking for parent and community involvement, so the last chance to sign up for those committees is October 28th. So anyone who wants to go and participate in those boundary meetings, we definitely encourage you to come out. I am done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilk. Ms. Satterwhite.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I owe you an apology. I'm sorry that things were not right on my screen. Thank you very much for doing that. I want to express my sympathy to the Battlefield High School community with the death of a student that was announced today. I want to thank Principal Ferreira for the very graceful letter that he sent out to our community. For any parents that have not checked your email, please check your email. There was an email that was sent by the principal to parents today. I want to address members of the press. There was something that went out today, and I was very, very upset. There was a press item that went out that made an announcement before our Prince William County school staff had a chance to notify our families and our parents about what had happened. I just ask that members of the press please work with the school system. When we have an emergency or crisis situation, please work with us. Don't work against us. Give us the time that we need to notify our staff members, to notify our parents, to talk to our students, to counsel with our students. That time wasn't given today. There was information put out in that article that should not have been put out. And it was very disturbing. So I just ask that members of the press please use discretion when we have crisis or emergency situations that happen. And realize that you're talking about our students, you're talking about our families, and this is something we take very, very seriously. And that's all for now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Satterwhite. Ms. Jessie.
Number one, I was in the Woodbridge High School parade. I had a great time. Gave away lots and lots and lots of candy. I think the adults were taking the candy from the children, but then that happens. And I also want to thank the chairman for being absent from 2 ribbon-cutting ceremonies because it's just some of my favorite people. And one was a ribbon-cutting ceremony for the traditional school with Mr. Bob Eichhorn, who is going to be the principal, and I was just ecstatic to be able to participate in that because what he has done in this particular arena, he's nationally recognized, and when we're in the chamber and every once in when we have to say a child is going to new direction, I actually say, wow, because those kids are performing at levels that often exceed kids in regular schools. And I want to thank you to Superintendent's office for providing, they're going to get bus transportation, right? And it's on the record now. I am so honored to have been there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having another appointment. The other thing I want to thank him for is that I also had the opportunity to I guess, celebrate the new maintenance facility. The Hill, as we called it Dependent Hill when I was there instead of Independent Hill. And we were in building, and the comment was in those buildings at that time that the termites were in a circle holding hands, and if one let go, the building would cave in. And a couple of times it did cave in. And for them to have a new facility, and these people work so hard, and I've worked with many of them over the years, so it was such an honor to be there. And to Dr. Waltz, you did something very special, and I don't recall the name of the gentleman. I know him by face. He had a picture of what was that? It was like a big cannon.
Yes.
It was a cannon found on the property, which tells you about our properties here. And he had it in his office, and Dr. Waltz said, well, do you want it framed? And he said, well, yeah, I'm going to frame it. I'm going to put it in. And you took that picture, and you framed that picture and for him. And he was just so touched by that. That's such a personal way of interacting. And we were there for quite some time, went from every room. It's a beautiful facility. While in that room, I ran into a person who has done so much in our county and has retired and came back. And I just want to honor Mr. Randy Dasher, who I think came to us without all the master's degrees and everything else, but just has the gift of the architectural designs and everything for this county for I don't know how long. I've known him for quite some time. And if the superintendent down the road would like to honor Mr. Dasher in some way, I'm not sure what the procedure is, but I would be honored if you would do something for him. And I want to thank him for his hard work. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Jessie. Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll keep it brief. I apologize for not being at the last meeting. I was ill, and I also am sad that I missed that wonderful ribbon cutting for our new non-traditional school facility over at New Directions. I am also a fan of Mr. Eichhorn, and I believe that all of the work that he does with the students out at New Directions is just, it provides our county with such an invaluable resource. That man is just absolutely amazing, and the connection that he's able to make, him and his staff, with students is outstanding. We provide options for students not only when we send them there because of disciplinary reasons, but for schedules, students who are responsible for their own minor family issues or for work, have to work, whatever the case may be. The success rate of that school is just outstanding, and I also with Ms. Jessie, I'm excited to at the fact that we will now be providing busing, and it will no longer take those students once the building is open 2 hours to get back and forth to school in most cases, or be on public transportation system with sometimes other adults who are unruly. In addition to that, I just want to reiterate what the superintendent said regarding our high school specialty nights. I don't think we can say it enough. October 24th at Garfield from 7 to 9 and October 25th for Stonewall from 7 to 9. I encourage parents and students to come check out our specialty programs. You never know what you may have an interest in. You might find yourself surprised, but you should truly see what our county has to offer. As I attended last week the college fair at Garfield High School, I was surprised to learn that some of our surrounding universities and schools are not aware of some of our specialty programs, specifically Cambridge. I was quite a surprise. So I encourage our students to go educate yourself so that when it's your time to apply, if you are in a specialty program, you can inform all of those wonderful colleges why they should pick you. And what an added value you've had to your education by participating in a specialty program. In addition to that, I also, it's early, but want to keep on the radar. Governor's School will be having an open house on information session on November 5th and December 3rd, both at 9 a.m. at GMU Science and Technology Hall. As the current chair, I'm always going to advocate for our students to check out the Governor's School. It's actually quite amazing. If you have not had the opportunity to do so, it's a wonderful program and a high success rate of our students graduating going on to Ivy League schools. So it's a pretty special place, and one of the things I like to brag about is our student who had received a patent for a Lyme disease test that came out of our Governor's School, which is something we all deal with seasonally around here, so it's pretty exciting stuff. And with that, I'm going to end my Board Matters time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Mr. Brand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Shortly after our last meeting on October 5th, I had the opportunity to attend some board training on Saturday, October 8th, with my fellow board members, Dr. Waltz and Ms. McGowan. I felt it was definitely beneficial to me as a new board member, and although I can't speak for everybody that attended, I think it did give us an opportunity to get to know each other a little bit better. I do look forward to making the school board code of ethics that we worked on that day official at an upcoming board meeting. This Friday, I look forward to attending a pep rally at Patriot High School for two members of their band who have been selected to join the U.S. All-American Marching Band. This band will perform at the U.S. Army All-American Bowl in San Antonio in January. So I want to, in advance, send some congrats to Ms. Najjar and Ms. Wong on this accomplishment, and I want to thank Patriot High School for inviting me to this event on Friday. And lastly, with Halloween approaching before our next board member, a little reminder to my fellow county residents to be mindful of the many trick-or-treaters that will be out and about on Monday, October 31st. And I do want to send well wishes in advance to our teachers on the morning of Tuesday, November 1st. Who definitely will be dealing with the sugar withdrawal from the night before. So best wishes to our teachers. I'm rooting for you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Brand. And Ms. Ralston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just like to announce that the Pi Lambda Lambda of the Omega Psi Phi took 75 students from our Prince William County schools down to VCU. Virginia State, I'm sorry. I'm looking right at it, down to Virginia State. So this is saying that there's a lot going on, and I'm so glad that Hampton is one of the schools that they're working in. You can walk in there and in the evening after school, and you will see the activities that they're doing right now. Also like to announce that Supervisor John Jenkins of NEAPSCO entered the Hall of Fame at Garfield High School, and along with just a list of wonderful other recipients of the same honor. One more. I did get a chance to attend that same ribbon cutting and the ribbon cutting and the groundbreaking. You know, that's one of the things that we seem to do a lot of around here, and it looks nice. Everything keeps looking nice. It's a pleasure to be in Prince William County. So I say to everyone, if you have not seen, and I know this sounds strange, a maintenance center, you've got to see this one. So with that, I am going home. I'm making this an announcement.
Thank you, Ms. Ralston. And I'll be very brief, very brief. I would ultimately... today, October 19th, 2016, it pains me that that although I do love coming to school board meetings, I'm very close with my parents. And today is my dad's 70th birthday. And he's a wonderful man, obviously, I think, with the world of my dad. And so with that, happy birthday to Mike Sawyers in Rawlings, Maryland, and happy 70th birthday. With no further business before this board, this meeting is adjourned.